Hello, welcome or welcome back. My name is Ari and today we are starting with shelf 1 of my month-long Read Your TBR Shelf Challenge. If you don't really know what this is about, let me do a quick explanation. This is a video series started by Emily Fox at Books with Emily Fox, and she basically has a coffee mug full of little slips of paper with shelf numbers on it, and she draws the shelf number out and then has to spend a week reading books from that particular shelf. Now, she organizes her books where her unread and read TBR are all mixed together. I do not. I have a separate standalone bookcase that just contains my unread TBR, and it's organized, which we'll go over in a little bit. And there's 3 shelves to it. So that's 3 weeks. The final week we're gonna do ebooks and audiobooks because we all know there's a backlog of those that we never think about. There's going to be 4 vlogs this month. The last one will probably be in the 1st of April, but 4 vlogs, and we'll read some books on this TBR shelf and try to make room. As I'm going to show you the shelf in just a second, but as you're going to see, like, the shelves are overflowing. So the main goal of this is to make enough room that I could fit all of the books on the shelf that they're supposed to belong on. Is this going to be possible? Probably not, because they're pretty badly overflowing, but it will be a good start. Before I turn this around, let me give you a quick breakdown of the shelf so you kind of know what to expect for each week. Week 1 is my fantasy and sci-fi shelf, so I'm going to be reading fantasy and sci-fi that week. Week 2 is kind of a catch-all type of shelf. I've got nonfiction on there, horror, and then just miscellaneous genres that aren't fantasy, sci-fi, science fiction, or horror, because that's mostly what I read. The final shelf is book box books. So these are all books that I got from book boxes that I haven't gotten around to reading yet. Yeah, I need to get on that. But those are the 3 shelves, and like I said, week 4 is going to be ebooks and audiobooks. We're going to do a minimum of 3 books off of each shelf each week. I'm going to try to get more, but I do have like other things that I have to do, and I only have a week. Sometimes these are going to be really long books, so it might be harder to get more than 3 books, but 3 minimum. DNFs are allowed. Let's turn this camera around and talk about shelf 1. All right, on first preview of shelf 1, it doesn't look too bad, but there's a small problem. Let's get some of this extra stuff out of the way. The problem is, one of my goals this year is to read sequels, so I've pulled all of the sequels off of the shelf. So all of those books are supposed to go on there too. Yeah. Anyway, let's talk about the 3 books that I'm going to start with on the shelf. 2 of them you may be able to guess if you watch my TBR video, because 2 of them are already on my TBR. The first one, so we can get these sequels out of the way, is Lord of Shadows. Lord of Shadows is the 2nd book in the Dark Artifices series by Cassandra Clare, and it's a thick book, so it's a good book to get off of the TBR this month. Let's go ahead and grab the other TBR book for book number 2, which we're gonna move these out of the way, and it is Everfair by Nisi Shaw. This book is one of the lowest rated books on my TBR, but it has an unlikable female character, so I'm hoping I like it, even if most people on Goodreads do not like it. So, yeah, we'll see. In the 3rd book, I'm not sure. I haven't decided yet. It's either going to be Caraval by Stephanie Garber or Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik. But because those 2 are 2 of the older books on my TBR, but I just haven't decided yet. So one of those you'll see later in this video. I also want to mention that I do have some graphic novels down here. I will probably get to one of these graphic novels. It's not going to make a whole lot of space, but it'll get a book off of my TBR. I just don't want to put it on there just in case I can't get to one of those. That is your first peek at shelf 1. If there is anything on this shelf that you can see that I haven't, or that I did not choose in this video, but you think I should definitely prioritize, please let me know down in the comments below, and let's get into book number 1. Alright, I have finished Lord of Shadows, which is the Dark Artifices book 2, and before I get into this, just want to let you know the dog is throwing a hissy fit right now because he's a toddler and he's tired, but he doesn't want to go to sleep. So just so you know, you're going to hear that in the background. Now, for me, The Lord of Shadows was a typical book 2. There's a lot of world building, a lot of building up to like the real bad guy, because how a lot of these books will go is you get book 1 where you have a bad guy and then they defeat them at the end of book 1. And then you get into either the end of book 1, like the very, very end of book 1, or the beginning of book 2, you realize that that's not truly the bad guy. There's a bigger bad in the background somewhere. So that's what happens with this. So we've got world building, we've got character building, like building up the relationships, making the characters more comfortable with each other before something really bad happens at the end. And then we go into like the conclusion of book 3. The interesting thing with Cassandra Clare in this book that I want to talk about isn't really so much the book, but the representation. And Cassandra Clare has always done like gay characters where we have male-male or female-female couples, which is cool, great, but she takes it further in this. She has got a trans character, which is very, very cool to see in popular media. There's also like hints of a polyamorous little relationship, which that is also cool. And she has an autistic character, which is also very cool to see in popular media. But the question always with these things is this done well? And I can't answer that. I am not trans, I am not polyamorous, and I am not autistic, but it feels like it's done well. But definitely look to Own Voices reviews for better information on that. I just want to let you know that it is in here, and to somebody it doesn't feel exploitative or gross or anything like that. But there is something in here that does feel gross. And this might lead to like a further discussion, but let's start with modern politics. I know, scary place to go. Like, if you are part of a group and Nazis are also part of your group, maybe you're the bad guy, right? Like, can you defend a group who Nazis feel comfortable being openly Nazi-ish in your group? Like you've made a safe space for Nazis at that point. That's bad. Just, if you weren't aware, not a great look for your group. That's how the shadow hunters are. Like, there are direct parallels between Nazism and shadow hunters. And all of the shadow hunters we always follow are like the good guys, but there's Nazis in your universe. There are people who are openly Nazis, and the majority of people in your universe that are shadow hunters are Nazis. So it is, the more I read shadow hunter books, the more I struggle with thinking shadow hunters are ever capable of being the good guys. Because good guys are a minority in the shadow hunters community, and the good guys never really stop the Nazi-like bad guys. And no matter which century, because these, not this exact trilogy, but the overall Shadowhunter books cover multiple trilogies, and there's always awful people. And it's like, if you get to that point where the majority of your community is a bad apple, maybe break yourself off from that community. Just, I don't know, because you haven't fixed it after a couple of centuries. Just saying. Just saying. But yeah, so I do not like the parallels that Cassandra Clare chooses to draw between Nazism and Shadowhunters. You can make characters bad guys without making them Nazis. So that just is uncomfortable. They're talking about like registering downworlders. So if you're familiar with like any of the X-Men plots, that's basically what this is trying to go from, except for this is from the perspective of the bad guys. So yeah, I was okay with this book. It wasn't my favorite, but I did okay, and it is pretty thick, which seemed like a good way to go after I've been so burnt out, but it did not stay that way. I started reading Everfair, and I'm gonna go ahead and DNF this because I literally spent the last 2 days binge watching Vampire Diaries instead of reading anything, just at the thought of having to read more of Everfair. I understand why this is low rated. So this is this was for the prompt under a 3.4 on Goodreads, and that was saving my page, but I'm DNFing it, so it doesn't matter. This one's very interesting because this doesn't have a huge amount of low ratings. This has mostly 3 stars, which isn't bad. And everybody says the same thing about this, where they were just like, it was fine, it was okay. Like, I didn't hate it, but I didn't like it either. Usually you don't see that. Usually you see people like, oh, it's fine, and they rate it 5 stars. But people just said this was mediocre and gave it a mediocre star rating. So, problems with this book. First off, I don't think it was marketed correctly. This is marketed as, like, alternate history steampunk. And while it is alternate history, it feels more like a history, and I'm not seeing a whole lot of steampunk. Maybe I just didn't get far enough into the book to hit the steampunk, but I read a little over 100 pages, and there's no steampunk in it. It just feels like historical fiction. The other big problem that I had with this book, it's got so many perspective characters. There's like 20 something perspective characters. Why do we need that? So it's very hard to like any characters when you're reading from the perspective of so many of them, and the perspectives aren't like different enough for my taste. So like it's an okay book, but it's not good, and I'm burnt out on reading. The other problem specifically to me is this was recommended to me as a book with an unlikable female protagonist. How am I supposed to find an unlikable female protagonist if I've already gone through 20 different perspective characters in the first 100 pages? Like, I don't like or dislike any of the perspective characters because I'm not spending enough time with them. But so far there was not any single female character or male character that I would consider particularly likable or unlikable. So I mean, there was one unlikable female character, but you didn't get her perspective. She was a side character. So I don't, not for me. I don't particularly like steampunk to begin with. So even if there is a promise of steampunk later in this book, that is not going to draw me in. I wanted this from the unlikable female character. As far as I can tell, it does not have an unlikable female character. From there, I have determined that I only want to read short books. Like, that's all I want to do right now is read short books. So that is what I'm going to treat myself to, is reading short books. And since we're still doing that shelf, I don't have a whole lot of short books on that shelf, but I do have some, especially graphic novels. So I'm going to go ahead and read Paper Girls Volume 4 by Brian K. Vaughan. Graphic novel, short. This will be fine. From there, I'm going to be reading To Be Taught If Fortunate by Becky Chambers. Becky Chambers is one of my favorite authors, and I adore her writing in long format. I've never read anything super short by her, but this is very short, by a favorite author. I think this will hopefully help me get back into a good headspace to continue books. And then from there, I am going to try to read Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik. This is, Naomi Novik is my sister's favorite author, and I've read at least one book by her. I don't know if I've read anything other than Addie LaRue by her, but I've had this book for a very long time. It sounds like something I would like. I like Naomi Novik's writing, I'm pretty sure. So it is thicker, but we're going to try for this one after I finish these. So let's see how that goes. And I will be back to check in probably once I finish the 2 short books. Alright, so I didn't have the most successful reading week, but that's okay. I did read Paper Girls Volume 4. We're getting a little bit more background finally on like why all of this has happened, like, or happening, like what the purpose of this universe is, everything like that. And it's mostly just like a story of a time travel battle that these 4 girls in like the 1980s get wrapped up in. I think they're from the 80s. They're either from the 80s or the 70s. Is this as good as Saga? No. But am I still kind of enjoying it? Yeah, sure. I have 2 more volumes to go on what is currently out in this. I have no rush to finish them anytime soon, but am enjoying good. I also read To Be Taught If Fortunate by Becky Chambers, a very short novella by Becky Chambers, who's one of my favorite authors. I've been putting this off for a while because this is the only unread book that I have by Becky Chambers, so it's like I want to hold on to it in case I need Becky Chambers, and you know what? I needed Becky Chambers. This novella is cute. I didn't like it as much as A Long Way to the Small Angry Planet, but I did like this. This is the turn of the 22nd century. We have a basically crowd-funded space exploration, and a group of 4 astronauts are sent on like a long, like an 80-year mission or something like that, and they're traveling to a bunch of different potentially habitable planets and just doing like the very basics of exploration. They're not really looking to find a new planet for humanity or anything like that. It's more of going to see what's out there, going to see how life evolved on other planets, if life did evolve on other planets. And they're just straight up scientists, and this is a strictly fact-finding mission. And so you follow Ariadne, who is she's not so much a scientist, she's what is she? She's an engineer. That's the word I was looking for. So you follow Ariadne, who's an engineer, and she is writing this like almost love letter back to Earth. And she starts off saying like, there is a question, like I have a question for anybody who finds this from Earth. I want you to answer it, but I want you to read this whole thing first before you answer it. And then at the very end it asks the question. So I really enjoyed this. I enjoyed like just the kindness that Becky Chambers writes. Becky Chambers has somehow made it where you can have conflict, but people don't have to be assholes. Her writing is just beautiful. The question itself, I was like, that's kind of stupid. But everything leading up to the question, I very, very much enjoyed. I always love reading Becky Chambers, and this is kind of what I just needed right now. I didn't start Spinning Silver at all, so that's just going back on my shelf. It's Friday, and I don't think I'll be able to read an entire book when I'm still a little bit burnt out, and then get this book up, or get this video up on time. on Saturday. So we're just gonna call it there. I did read 3 books and DNF'd 1, which not exactly what I had planned to do this week, but that's okay. Sometimes you just need a little bit break. I will let you know that I am 3 seasons into my rewatch of Vampire Diaries. This is probably like the 6th or 7th time that I rewatched it, but it's just kind of what I need right now. So it's what I'm gonna do right now. Anyway, I will see you Tuesday for another video. I don't know what it's going to be yet, but I'll figure it out between now and then. And shelf 2 will be up next Saturday. Bye.